Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mage, and I'm bringing ZT Soso with us for our next round of creeping patterns. So, if you want to go ahead and say hi here, Soso.
Hi everybody, it's
And,
ZT So.
yep, he is one of our best human players currently. And let's go ahead and unpause it now, Soso.
Yeah,
And so we got a lot of feedback, a lot of good feedback on our last edition, and one of the main things was that people asked if we could A, not do a live game because Magadansky has a ridiculously loud keyboard, and B, if we could do it from Soso's point of view. So I've got this going from Soso's point of view. He is spawned in the top right corner, and he is playing in a play free-for-all bot game. So there will be 6 people on this map, which will give us an interesting indication. We'll talk a little bit about what happens if there are only 4 people or even if there are 8 people. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get some of your early thoughts on Market Square, Sosa.
well, to start with, Market Square is kind of interesting map in the aspect that you're actually spawning pretty close to an opponent in the corner, in the upper right corner in this case, where I'm close to gray, and that makes an interesting aspect in terms of what creeps you're gonna creep and how you're gonna approach the game so that you may be strong still in the mid to the late game.
Mm-hmm. So we can see you've just gone ahead and scouted gray here, and you see
Yeah.
that you actually do have an opponent in your corner. So obviously this will probably cause a little more friction when you're trying to get your first expansion secured. How is this changing your game plan if you had no opponent there versus having an opponent there?
Well, if I didn't have any opponent, I would probably start off by taking the corner expo to the top right corner.
Mm-hmm.
Because the corner expos are usually what you want because they are farther away from the opponents you would have in the down right corner or top left.
Yep.
So that's definitely the expand that's best to get in that aspect. But on this game, I'm actually gonna opt for the mid expo to the right instead to kind of keep a peace level between Gray and me, at least to start with.
Makes sense. So we
So
can
that
see you're using your militia camp to go ahead and creep the green here as well.
yeah.
Just off the top of my head, I would have figured the militia would time out currently. Can you tell us a little bit more about your general usage of militia on this map? And are you bringing them back to have them turn back into peasants and reuse them as militia?
No, the actual idea about this is that I just bring 4 to creep that because it's very nice and drops a decent item, I think, for a green spot. And at the same time, I'm getting almost level 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the lumber enough for bringing 5 peasants now and expand immediately. If I'd went for the expansion right away with 5 peasants, I wouldn't have wood to actually build the expand right away.
Makes sense.
So that in that way, I'm almost level 3 when I've crept this camp, and I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
It just makes me stronger in the start, and also you don't clash with an opponent right away because this is a bot game, and sometimes people do
That makes sense.
irrational stuff.
Yeah, so we can see that you currently have scouted your closest neighbor, but you have not sent a scout down to the bottom yet. When do you think about doing that, and how would it affect you if you're surrounded versus not being surrounded here? Does it make that much of a difference? I mean, Market Square is really the biggest thing, seems to be having the opponent directly above you. So how
Yeah,
much of a difference will being surrounded make?
if this was an FFA Masters League game, I would definitely scout all all the places.
Mm-hmm.
But since this is a ladder game, there's a tendency that when you scout people, sometimes people see that as or players see that as a form of aggression. So
Okay.
that's why I opted not to do that. Because sometimes if you scout, for example, this orc here, the purple orc,
Yeah.
then sometimes you would have a blade master harassing your expansion,
Makes
which
sense.
is not what you want.
I actually have my replay vision just from your vision, so the viewers cannot see that there's a purple orc below you, but
Oh,
they'll
okay.
figure that
Yeah.
out momentarily. And we
Yeah.
can see that you are going to try and take down this middle creep camp here. You are not far into the game, about 5 minutes in, and you're already creeping a red camp here. Is this something that you think that human has a large advantage? I know a lot of people go for an early creep on these red camps with human.
Yeah.
Do you think that other races are able to do that? And do you ever fear that you're going to be creep checked this early in the game, or are you feeling relatively safe right now?
I feel relatively safe. It's just one of the things I think you can exploit as human.
Mm-hmm.
The water elementals level 2 and lowering the creeps to go and approach you so that you don't have to attack them all at once and you can surround them even if you want to. And it just the bandit lord in this case just drops a really good item, a summon item. Usually you can even get an infernal here.
Yep.
I just get the scroll of resurrection, but if you get an infernal, it's just very easy to take an opponent out. In this case, Gray.
So you
if I
would
wanted
consider
to.
rushing somebody if you got the Infernal here?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely would.
Let's go ahead. We can see that you've got your expansion up here, and you blocked it off with 2 lumber mills. Is that purely for the fact that you have enough gold and they're easy to put up? They save you a lot of time if you need to fight in your expansion?
Yeah, the thing with the lumber mills is that they just provide a very good block for you as the game goes on. It's very helpful, especially on the ladder. I would probably not do this on a FFA Masters League game because people are usually rational enough not to rush you on just one expo this early in the game. We're only about 7 minutes in.
Yep.
But on a ladder game, it makes sense because usually you would have people rushing you at this point in the game.
Okay. And we can see here that you've got a little bit of a later tech for your keep because you did go ahead and put up your expansion. This means that you may have a level 5 Archmage before you get your second hero out. How does that typically affect you? And how do you handle your creeping in that instance because you don't want the Archmage to leech all the experience?
I just use the water elements to creep with, and then I just tank with the Mountain King, and hopefully I'll have enough units to actually creep the good spots. In this case, where I'm trying to creep the red spot in the top right corner, I actually make a pretty huge mistake, but it's really nice to have a level 5 Archmage at this stage of the game already. So you can get fast mass TP, and it's just really good on Market Square, obviously, because it's such a big map.
Yep. So after you get level 5 on this, in a typical game, would you ever consider going towards the health and fountain and mana fountains in the middle to try and pick up a Tome of Power with your Archmage immediately after?
I usually opt not to do that. It's probably because I practice a lot on the ladder, and people are just, if there's 8 players or 6 players, they will just, at this time, usually be just all trying to creep the middle. So I just think it's safer and perhaps also better to just focus on the red camps.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that
areas.
These red camps drop better items for sure. I was just curious about your strategy on that. And we can see that you're doing a nice job of going ahead. You're going to have 2 red camps creeped before the 9-minute mark ordinarily. In a more competitive game, such as the FML game, how many of these would you expect to be able to get in a single game? Would 3 red camps be good? 4 red camps? What's your goal for that?
I'd say I'd be happy if I could get 3. Normally, I think, because when you play in a FFA Masters League, there's actually more red camps as you have all the granite golems. That's really good item. That drops really good items too. So you can actually get more red camps. But in this case, I think 2, 3 red camps would actually be. I would be really happy about that, since it's a ladder game and all.
Yep. And do you usually wait for the typical red creeps to be done before you creep the granite golems, since those are typically viewed as harder, and especially for a race like Night Elf, they're hard to bring down. Although if you're going for griffins, then you don't have a whole lot of damage to do either.
Yeah, actually, the human race has a lot of options when it comes to creeping. I find that a really strong one of the strengths of human, that they can opt for rifle builds and they can opt for footman builds. In this case, I went footman to start with, so that kind of limits my creeping in a sense, but it also makes me stronger in the start to mid game, because I can then solo people easier. But had I went for a rifle build, I would probably consider going for golems, although you would have to get a lot of rifles and even casters to creep that, and I'm not sure you want that just because it's better to stay at 50 most of the time, hoarding, unless you're going to rush someone.
So let's go ahead and talk about your base a little bit here. The first thing that stands out to me is you have dual blacksmith shops going up, and I think that makes sense, but something that a lot of people don't do. So why don't you give us a little bit of the rationale behind this?
Well, the double blacksmith is, I think, in most cases, the best option, at least from my viewpoint, because it enables you to get the upgrades faster if you want to go for a Griffin Rush, for example. If you have an Orc next to you, you can get the upgrades really fast and then have Inner Fire. In which case you're gonna be in a really good position to take him out easily. And just if you have like two expos or even one expo, you can get 1/1 upgrades or even 2/2 upgrades relatively fast when you start fighting, and that just gives you such an edge. If you go for a particular, unit combo, there's plenty of options for human in that aspect with upgrades.
And so Market Square is not a map that is well known for being generous about the amount of wood on it. We can see that you have 3 peasants currently getting wood at your expansion, as well as it looks like another 9 getting it at your main, and you still don't have a ton of wood. So at what point do you cut back on those number of peasants? Is it once you reach 3/3 upgrade, sometime before then, or how do you try and manage your macro?
I usually don't cut down on peasants until I feel like I have all my upgrades and that all the infrastructure in an ideal situation. But sometimes you have to kind of think about your army. If you get, for example, rushed by an undead with fiends and worms, you want to make sure you can get all the units out as possible, because that army can just crush you if you don't have the right answer for it. For example, when you play against Marga, you know what I mean.
Yep, absolutely. And you currently only have 1 expansion up. I presume that is partially because this is a 6-player free-for-all and partially because it's a bot free-for-all. But if you're playing in a league game, when would you consider getting your 2nd expansion?
I would get it after I tech. Yeah, I would definitely get it after I tech with my main keep. And then just get the 2nd expansion right away, because I feel like getting the gold is definitely way more important than creeping some of the smaller camps.
And we see that your Archmage currently has a Tome of Retraining on it. I presume that's when you're done creeping, or you can go ahead and do it now. You're retraining to Brilliance and Blizzard.
Yeah. At this stage of the game, I'm in a position to go 80 food relatively quickly. I have the infrastructure. I got 2-3 workshops, and I've actually accidentally built 2 or 3 sanctums. I would have wanted 2. And then I could just pump 80 quickly, and in that case, it's just better to have Blizzard, especially Blizzard level 3 instead of water elementals in almost any situation, I'd say.
Okay. And we can see that, surprisingly, you are one of the human players that does not appear to have very many towers in the base. Can you tell us why that is? Is it from a macro reason? Do you put more towers in later, or just not a tower player in general?
I use towers, but I use them later in the game, because right now I think that towers would just be a waste of resources. In the case, usually on ladder you get rushed a lot, so you need to be prepared for that. And if I put a lot of towers in, say, my main, I would be weak to defend at my expansion. Also, towers, people just hate that, so they would just start manipulating against you, and that's never a good thing. You don't want to be drawing too much attention to yourself early in the game.
Yep. So about how long into the game for a league game would you say that all the creeps are usually crept by? We can see there's a significant amount of creeps that are open now currently, but that may be partially because it's a ladder game. People are attacking each other early on. So how long do you usually feel like you have that you'll be able to creep, and at what point do you think it usually turns into, okay, all the creeps are gone, and now you have to plan your next move against an opponent?
On this map, I think actually you have to be kind of quick because, people will really want to get the red spots really quickly. Mm-hmm. Because it just gives you such an edge in the late game or mid game. So I'd say it's about this time where the creeps are, all the red camps are about to have been crept. So yeah, it's about 15, 16, 17 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. And so that will bring us to pretty much everything we need to cover, but let's go ahead and take a look at your base here, and why don't you give us some information about what you think is really good about your base and anything that you might change. I notice you do not have anything blocking the ramp, whereas a lot of people will typically try to block up the ramp and create a choke point there. Can you give us the rationale behind that?
Usually I actually place my towers sort of around the ramp so that when you step up you get to be attacked by a rain of towers, like a square. But in this case I actually put my workshops in the way of that. But other than that, I usually just put my towers behind my castle and sort of around the ramp. Yeah, just because I think it's more easy to maneuver around the base, and it also kind of enables you to draw back and stuff like that. Instead of just, you can't really do anything when you're behind your towers, as opposed to actually fight them when the tower's in the back of you, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep, absolutely. And then, are there any other parting thoughts on this map that you want to go ahead and talk about before we wrap it up?
Actually, no, not that much, except that this is of course, I think it's a good map for human in general, because there's not a lot of markets and a lot of gold and ways to use mass teleportation, and just I like it in that aspect. But the granite golems are of course, I think, a challenge, because other races have an easier way of creeping those, so you might want to look into builds that can actually kind of cover for that.
Okay, and then I've got one last question for you. This is obviously a bot game, but what are some of the big differences between playing in a 4-person league game and a 6 or 8-person ladder game? Just for players that either are playing FML now and want to take ladder more seriously, or are playing on the ladder and thinking about playing in FML later on.
Well, okay, there's a lot of it's very different. In 6 to 8 way ladder games, you are enabled to kind of dominate the game early, or dominate the game in general, because people will not focus so much on you as they will if you're 4 players and you kind of are aware of what's going on in the game, especially in free-for-all Masters League, because people are just usually accustomed to the free-for-all logic, so they know what's going on in the game. So you have to be kind of aware of that when you play free-for-all Masters League and when you play bot games. Teaming is of course the kind of Achilles heel, if you can say that, in FFA Masters League. So you kind of have to adapt your play style to that, or you just you won't
Alright.
make it that far.
Makes sense. So if there's nothing further, let's go ahead and wrap this one up so we can move on to our next map.
Yep.
Again, this has been Market Square. We've been learning how to play it with ZT Soso. Soso, thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
And make
I'm
sure
happy to do this.
Well, we'll be having you back quite a bit, so make sure to check out the future episodes that have them in. We'll catch you all later.